Okay, we are live. Yes. So I'm really excited to join you in our presentation today. I'm going to try to respect people's time. So keeping it in like the 30-minute mark. We want to definitely get to questions at around the 20, but chat questions at any time you would wish, because the point of this is to answer your questions. Of course, being very much into teaching people, we have some slides prepped here. But yeah, I'll since Wilson, you're joining my channel, you want to introduce yourself before we jump into any form of presentations? I know we put like introducing ourselves in the presentation, but
Yeah, no, excited to join. It's funny. Student loans is actually one of my favorite topics, and chatting with Catalina and everybody else is such a treat. So I'm Wilson from a finance hospital. I teach PAs and MPs all about money. But one of the topics you have to learn about first is loans, and with everyone's payments coming up soon, really, critical time to start learning about it, and understanding what to do with them. So, yeah.
awesome. Okay, cool. We're gonna try not to, I'm gonna try to keep this as upbeat and not boring as possible. But I did want to put slides here because at least if you're a visual learner like me, having some slides is always important. And I wanted to say I did a webinar and somebody made this comment on LinkedIn I wanted to share, not to brag about myself, but just to preview the value of staying on for these few minutes, especially if you are not already working with Loan Sense or even with Wilson, that I provide really clear information, right? So I want to make it that there'll be learning value for everybody involved. So today, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is loan forgiveness, what is Biden's SAVE program. I want to provide quick summary updates of PSLF, public service loan forgiveness, because the rules have just been updated as of this July. And of course, understanding, should you pay your loans faster or should you pay less? What is your strategy? And what are the must do's before repayment starts? And of course, chat away your questions as we go through this. Wilson will definitely be helping track some questions as well as obviously add to the content. And we want to get your questions answered. So we'll dive right in. For those that do not know me, I want to give a really quick spiel. I'm so passionate about student loans because I spent about a decade helping people get into college, understanding aid, even negotiating financial aid. But I didn't really fully understand the impact of student loans until I took out a bunch myself. And then I tried to go buy my first house. And then they said, pay down your student loan debt. And so I was like, wait, 1 second. How is following this formula of getting my education now trying to go get a house? How is this all connected? I didn't understand it. I changed into a federal student loan plan, was able to close on my first home 45 days later, and realized not only is this being impacting our generation because everybody's taking out debt, but then it could have possibly negative repercussions if people don't understand how to manage it or their decline for future financial goals. So I became obsessed with figuring out how to help people really understand student loans. I don't want to say the word game them, but in many ways, gaming them so that you can make them more manageable in your life, right? And so I'm all about gaming them, of course, legally, so that you can optimize your financial well being. So I just wanted to start a little bit with my own story because it's why we care so deeply at Loan Sense and why we're so committed to just amazing customer support, not just with the advice, but also with enrolling into the appropriate plans. We even help people with that. So I will turn it over to you, Wilson, to introduce why are you so passionate being, in healthcare? Why are you so passionate about this?
Yeah, no. I think especially in healthcare, we don't think about loans when we like. So for me, I coach on kind of financial literacy, personal finance, and investing. But very early on, I realized you can't really talk about any of that stuff if you're still if you're still buried in loans. If you don't have a good plan for your loans, it is impossible to think about anything else coming into the future. So as much as I love talking about personal finance and investing and all those fun topics, I always start with loans first, especially a lot of us in the healthcare field, graduate now with six figures of loans. Catalina knows if for typical American, maybe 30,000, 40,000 at most, right? Healthcare providers, 2, 300, 400K. It's a lot. So for me, a lot of the passion comes from understanding that, hey, when it comes to student loans, like at the end of the day, you're going to be okay. You just need a good plan. You need a really good plan, right? It's not it's not just, oh, you have to pay it down aggressively or do this or the other. There's a lot of different options, and it's not just one size fits all. And that's why I love working with Catalina, because every person that comes to us, it's always a personalized plan. And we just really share all the options. We have kind of the same philosophy. It's a holistic kind of view of everything before deciding the plan. One thing I'll say before we go into the slides is the thing I really like working together with LoanSense is we always try to figure out your goals, right? Your goals, your situation, and what you want to do. And then we make your loans match that situation. One big mistake, especially for healthcare providers, they decide on the loan plan and then they make their lives adjust to that. And that always fails. I would say you're going to be miserable. You don't want to let your loans decide your fate, right? You decide what you want to do first, and then find someone who teaches you what to do with your loan so it matches it. That was my
No,
spiel.
I love that. No, that's such a good philosophy because my understanding of student loans as a borrower was I should just pay them off aggressively. Like when I was told no, you can't buy a house, pay down your loans because that's literally what I was told. I just was thinking, okay, how many years do I have to eat ramen? Like what will this house I want be worth? Can my salary increase at the rate that I need to eat ramen for? Like I was just making all these like thinking like this, but I never, and that's kind of like the automatic go to, like debt is bad. You have to pay it off aggressively, which by the way, the strategy that you deal with like a credit card is going to be very different than student loans because student loans have access to all these federal programs and protections that people just don't understand. And so the strategy behind paying off them have to be student loans have to be very different than like credit card debt, for example. So I love your philosophy though, Wilson, that you have to understand what is your life goals. Like if someone says, I'm going to work at this hospital system or I'm going to work in this nonprofit. I hate my life, but I have to get PSLM. It's like, okay, you hate your life. Let's start there. Why do you have to do this then? And so it's always like a question of like, what do you value? What do you want? And then your loans are part of it, right? It's not you live to pay your loans, right? It can't
Correct.
be that way. So I totally agree. So yeah, thanks for that intro. I loved it. So let's dive into the first topic. Are there questions we should be answering as I do this? I love it. We already have one. Should I be looking at these questions, lender, or should I switch over to a credit union since off? Okay, so let me pause on that question. I'm trying to be cognizant of the question. Okay, Wilson, I'll let you ping me though, because otherwise I'll be reading questions, not getting the presentation. But but love to address questions. I'm not ignoring them. Okay. So, what is loan forgiveness? I just want to start super high level. People think, oh, only public servants, nonprofit, or government workers get loan forgiveness. And it's actually not true. A private sector employee that is not associated in healthcare or in anything nonprofit related can actually access loan forgiveness as well. It's just longer. It's a longer pathway. It's more payments, but it it's still possible and it's still accessible, right? And this is why we say a personalized loan plan is so important because whether you get forgiveness as a result of paying minimal payments depends on factors like income, number of dependents, and also like especially right now since President Biden rolled out what's called the income-driven repayment waiver, how many of your prior payments have counted and how many more do you have to make, right? So understanding that's really important to understanding can you access loan forgiveness by making lower payments, right? So I like to say that it's again not just for public servants; it's also for private sector employees. Your remaining balance after you make the payments and you make the total number of qualifying payments you need to make based on your student loan plan, then whatever remains will get forgiven, right? So, what we tell people, especially private sector that isn't being actively tracked by Mohila, is to understand how many payments do you have counted today? And I used to be surprised by this fact, but now that Biden's rolling out Save, that we're going to go over next, nobody knows how many payments they have left. And I think the one downside of Save is that it's a moving target, you know? So we're going to go through that a little more as well. But yes, loan forgiveness can be accessed by both public and private sector employees. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Wilson?
No, I think you nailed it, and it's always like, oh, what works for me, like forgiveness, pay down, yada yada. It's always look at the numbers and then explore all the options, which you're gonna go over. So
Right,
that's all I
right.
had to say. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So, for example, here's one thing like, huge relief came as a result of COVID-19. Like, we went into these $0 payments, and guess what? Good news, $0 payments actually count towards loan forgiveness. It counts towards loan rehabilitation. It counts towards temporary and expanded relief. Temporary relief is just to help people get more payments counted, but essentially, these $0 payments count as payments. Literally, if your payment is $600 a month and we've been on pause for 3 years, it's as if you made $600 payments and you did it. You know what I mean? That's pretty incredible because that literally automatically means you are going to pay less, especially if you're going towards the loan forgiveness route. You're going to pay less than had you made these payments, because people ask us all the time, well, shouldn't I just pay? Won't I get them counted? You're going to get them counted anyways. Okay. Which means that if you're getting them counted anyways, the money that you have made payments towards, if you have direct loans, this only works if you have direct loans. If you have FFELP loans, family educational loans, you cannot get your money back. So if you have direct loans and you made any payments from March 13th of 2020 until today or over the next 8 days, you can get that money back. Okay. All you have to do is call your servicer, tell them what payments you've made, what are the dates, and they will give you back that money. We have helped people get upwards of $117,000 back. Like, they couldn't believe it. They were taking pictures of like checks from the US Treasury to email them to us and be like, "Oh my god, I thought you were joking. This was real." And they like sent us like images of like $117,000 worth of checks. It was crazy. So the point is you can get the money back, especially if you know you're going towards loan forgiveness. Obviously, if you want to accelerate your payment, that's the right route, then you can make those payments. But we want to at least let people know that, you know?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add too is like if you had like Catalina said, like direct loans and you made payments during the pandemic and you still have no idea what you're doing with your loans, it's still not a bad option to pull it out because it's pretty risk free. Because if later you figure out, oh, I should have paid into them, you could just put them right back in. Like there is no risk to pulling it out. The only risk is if you decide forgiveness was correct for you and you put in 100,000, which I've seen of which we've done for clients. They literally paid 200,000 even maybe into their loans the whole time where they're qualifying for PSLF. It's a great opportunity to pull it out. So it's pretty
And
risk free.
and you only have 8 days to pull it out. The deadline to pull out money you have made during this pause is up at the end of August. So don't sit there and twiddle your thumbs wondering, should I do it? And don't wait until the last day, because the phone lines are going to probably be jammed, right? Everyone's getting their statements with payment due. Do not wait until the last possible minute. So I like to tell people, yes, go ahead and do that, while you have a few days. So let's go into Biden's SAVE program a little. Is this good transition? Wilson, it what is Biden's SAVE program, right? It's a new student loan program that replaces the revised pay as you earn program, and it lowers payments relative to other programs because it's changing the formula. The formula is called discretionary income. Not that you need to know all that, but it basically changes how much the government recognizes you should earn before you pay a dime towards your loan. So it's increasing that amount. And it's increasing it from 150% of poverty to 225% of poverty, which means this is what it translates to. It translates to, if you're a family of four, not having to make a dime of repayment unless you make over $67,000. That's what it's translating to. So if you're a single person, it's around 32 to 30. Is it 32 or 35? It's one of the it's around 32. I'm sorry, 32 to 33,000. So if you make much more than that, then of course you're going to use a percentage of that income to recognize, but it increases the amount that you need to make. That's one thing. The second thing is it provides forgiveness instead of waiting until the end of 120 years. It provides forgiveness. It helps you, like, if let's say your payment on the standard plan is $1,000 and the government says your payment should be 300, then you can get that 700 difference forgiven month over month, as long as at the end of the year you file into the plan proving your income on time. Okay, that's really, really important because If you don't file in time, it will jump up your payments. But the point is, it qualifies 100% for what you don't pay for forgiveness. Other plans would qualify for partial forgiveness depending on the plan. So this is also a great way to access greater amount of forgiveness, right? The one downside that I mentioned is that if you're not a public servant, if you're a public servant, you pay for 10 years no matter what. If you're not a public servant, it changes the number of years you have to pay, ranging from 13 to 25 years based on how much you borrowed. I submitted my comments to the government saying it's confusing enough to make one like program 20 years, another 25, another 10 based on your employer. Now you're telling me that as an individual, I have to figure out, do I make 13, 14, 15, 17, 20 years of payments? That's crazy, but that's what the government has chosen to do. So if you take out over 12,000, for every $1,000, it gives you one more year of payment. Okay, which is so confusing, and I don't even think it makes sense. Why is someone that borrows 13,000, why should they pay 13 years and someone that borrows 12 should pay 12? Like I don't understand why $1,000 increases the length you pay by an entire year. I don't understand the rationale behind that, but that's how they rolled it out, and it's a moving target. So again, most important takeaway, you have to know how many payments you have to make, and I encourage people to month over month count how many you have left. You know what I mean? Don't rely on someone else to tell you, because if they mess that up, like people come to us, they're like, I've been paying 20 years. Why am I not done? And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, how many payments count? I have no idea. And it's like, we have to go and start trying to track things down, you know? And so, anyways, needless to say, it has many great benefits. And the moving time number of payments you have to make is not one of them. But there are so many other benefits that I'm not going to dwell more on that, but I just do want to bring that up because that does impact the overall length if you're not a public servant. Again, public servants, 10 years. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Wilson?
No, I think you nailed it, and I would agree that the Save program overall is a win. I would say very few people would disagree and say like it's not a better program compared to Repay, and it's just understanding how that fits your situation, which you'll dive into in future
Yeah,
sessions.
and here's another thing. What I love about Save that's different from Revised Pay as you earn is you can always file your income taxes separate from your spouse and not have their income counted. So we can elaborate and get into those types of situations. Yeah, if there's additional questions, right? Yeah, so I'd love to yeah, we could talk about that more. You know, if we have people that that situation applies to, if you're married, please comment in the comment section. We're happy to answer some questions around that. So, let's talk about some of the permanent changes to PSLF. Lump sum payments now count as multiple payments. Before the old program, let's say you went for an employee benefit program and they pay your student loan down. They pay you $5,000. They make it out to the servicer in your name to credit your account. Well, that only 5,000 only counted as one payment. That is horrible, right? As in, like, why should your employer pay 5 grand and it not even get you at least three payments closer to getting loan forgiveness, right? Or four or five or something. Why only one, right? And so, what the government is saying now is, let's say you go apply for the National Health Service scholarship and you get $50,000 because you're doing the hard work of working in a rural hospital, right? Let's say you get it. Now, when the Health Service Corps makes out that $50,000 check and you pay it to Mohila to pay down your loans, it will literally count $50,000 divided by what your payment is. And that's the number of payments that will count now. And the reason I want to emphasize the value of that is because if your payment's lower today than it is tomorrow, making lump sum to payments today is great because your payment's lower today, right? So I wanted to mention that as well. You can waive in school deferment. I wanted to point that out because so many non-traditional students, right? They'll go to get their bachelor's degree, be working in some form of something, and then they'll go back and tack on their master's degree. Like they'll go to work full time and get their education more than half time. That includes teachers, a lot of different healthcare workers. Before, you would all that time you were in school just wouldn't count. Now you can waive the in-school deferment. You could say, "Wait, but I'm working full-time for a nonprofit. I want the fact that I'm working full-time and I want to make payments. I want this time to count so that you're not just sitting there waiting until you get out of school deferment in order for your payments to count." That's another amazing benefit. We There's forms you can file also to get to waive in school deferment. Just FYI. Um, there's also special rules for Texas and California healthcare workers that work for a private contractor can now get public service loan forgiveness. Huge use case for Kaiser workers who are coming to us in crazy numbers. Please continue to come. We love to help you. Kaiser especially made it difficult. If you're not a doctor, you have to fax in all the forms. We have it down. We are there for you. We will do the annoying process with you for you. Okay. And then, of course, I want to also mention adjunct professors also have a very clear way that the university rules on how the university has to count your payments based on the credits you teach instead of whatever the university HR person feels like saying your hours are, which is completely random, right? So it's standardizing how to count loan forgiveness. Now it's a minimum of 30 hours to get qualification. It could be across two employers working 15 hours or one employer working more than 30. I just want to clarify that because um, if you don't, some people work part-time, two jobs, and they happen to also be at two nonprofits that can qualify. And then lastly, you can get, if you have FFDL loans, you can consolidate and get prior payments counted towards PSLF. I want to say that because before consolidation would start your payment count over. But right now, because of the income driven waiver, especially if you have FFEL loans, you should definitely consolidate them and do not fear losing your prior payments, which that wasn't always the situation. So I don't know, Wilson, if you have anything to add, because I know you may have people coming and asking more PSLF questions too.
Yeah, no, I love this slide because before there were so many workarounds and so many things you have to educate people on about like there's this rule that that we have to follow because that's how it is. Especially like just starting from the top, the lump sum payments. That one never made sense to us. Where like if you're
Yes.
doing, like people used to ask, I'm doing an SC scholarship. Should I do it with PSLF? And back in the day, I think it used to depend. I think it depended on how much debt you have and also
Yeah.
your timeline, but it didn't, it never felt good if it's like, oh, they gave me 50K and like it counts as one payment, right? It never felt good. But now you
Right.
could really leverage it to get that lump sum payment to accelerate PSLF, which is
Yes.
amazing. And other ones, especially with Texas and California, we have a lot of people working for a Kaiser, but there's also like nonprofit hospitals. It's interesting how they contract it. And we got a good question here about it. It's before, like, especially California, Texas, like you'll work for a nonprofit, but then you couldn't qualify because you were hired by HR as a private contractor coming in, which made no sense. But this is huge, right? Like working in large healthcare organizations, I will say, like they usually everyone thinks going towards the nonprofit route, like you earn less money, you actually earn more. At least in the healthcare setting, your income benefits are actually a lot better. Plus, if you can add like forgiveness on top of it, it's really good. And we had a question: does working part time for a nonprofit count? Ooh, I'll let you tackle this one, Catalina, because this one's kind of relevant.
Yeah. So yes, I could tackle some of the questions coming in. Demario, could you clarify your question a little because I want to answer it very badly. So may I ask you, Demario, to clarify your question if you should switch over to your credit union since they offer repayment? Are you talking about from the perspective of an employee or are you talking about a private student loan? I just want to make sure I understand the question. Now let me go to I could show this question. I didn't even read it yet. I'm just showing it. And then I'm not going to forget you, Christine, but since Wilson brought this up, does working part-time for a nonprofit count? Also, how do you get our nonprofit employer on the approved list? Okay, so let me first of all, how does working part-time for a nonprofit count? Well, number one, how does that nonprofit define part-time? Because a lot of employers will say if you work under 40 hours, you're considered part time. For the purpose of PSLF, it doesn't matter now what the employer considers you, it matters the average number of hours you work. And so, in a lot of nonprofits, especially in healthcare, they'll be like, you have to work X amount of hours per month. It's not averaged by the week. So if it averages over the week to 30 plus hours or even 29.5, if the average comes to 30, then we could fill out the form says 30 and that now qualifies you for quote unquote full time. If you work for a nonprofit part time, if you could even like, and part time meaning under 30 hours, if you could ask them to bump it to 30 or get another position at another nonprofit to fill in the gap, even some people will even do it if it's like just some low wage opportunity just to now qualify them. Like, let's say they're like, well, I work 26 hours at this nonprofit. They won't let me bump up the hours. They will literally just get something at another organization just so they could fill in like 5 hours a week. Sometimes, like we've seen, as long as two employers add up to 30 hours, you can get that counted towards PSLF. I just want to say that though, because I do think it's important, especially if you're a few hours off from getting a good amount of loan forgiveness. You know what I mean? And I specifically see the situation for like a lot for like women who decide they want to have more time at home with their children, for example, but they're still working like 25 hours. They're like, okay, I'm going to add 5 more so that I can get PSLF and have this time counted, right? So that those are some scenarios in which uh those that aren't full time. So I don't know your specific scenario, Lai, but I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so how do you get our nonprofit employers on the approved list? That I think you're meaning there's a PSLF employer search tool. Not every nonprofit is on that search tool. It doesn't mean that you don't qualify for PSLF. So I want to make that clear. Just because your employer is not on that does not mean you're not PSLF qualified. It's really important to get the specifics from your employer. Are they a 501c3? Are they registered? Do you have like, there's ways you can find that out and get down to that information. That's more important to understand than getting them on the approved PSLF search tool, if that's what you're referring to. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. Um, okay, so let me go through a few more slides and then I'm going to get back to more questions, okay? Because I don't want us to continue to going through slides like all night or something. That's not my intention. So let's talk about strategies to pay off, because this is where Wilson's like, this is gold. So you can pay off your loans really quickly, like your hair's on fire, or so to say, or you could go the forgiveness route where you pay as little as possible over a certain number of payments, whether it's the 10-year or the 20-year, and then you get the rest forgiven, right? Those are the two strategies. Now you ask yourself, how do I know which strategy I personally should follow? And so our philosophy goes like this. And by the way, when I ask these questions, you can think about yourself. Okay, as we go through this, because this is not meant to be generic. So number one, do you have a stable job with income in the private sector? That's one. Also, do you have less debt than income? So let's say you earn 80, like you earn 120,000 and you have 80,000 in debt. Well, you have less debt than income, right? Especially if you significantly less debt than income, and you have a stable job, paying quickly may be a good route for you, right? So paying less, it can be employer based, it can also be income based. So employer based is like, hey, are you nonprofit government worker that could possibly limit how much you really actually have to pay over time? Like if you can get it for like anything you don't pay over a minimum amount of payments over 10 years, could you get that forgiven based on your nonprofit and government employee status, right? Then there's also a status based on your income. Let's say you have more debt than you have income. Like let's say you earn 60,000 or 70,000, you're a teacher, you're a social worker and you had to go back and get your master's. Now you have 80, 90, 100,000 in debt to get credentialed for your job, to even get that 5, 10,000 pay bump. You had to go take out 20, 30,000, and now you have 90,000, but you're only got a pay bump to 65. Well, you're a great candidate based on the amount of debt to consider paying less. Okay. And so these are the few things. And so now, what are some actions you should take? with understanding this, right? So with the pay quickly, I say stop making payments. This is really meant for the pandemic pause. We're about to enter payments again. So let me clarify this. You can always save your funds now, right? And the resulting payments is once interest kicks in and you definitely know I'm going to pay down my debt. I have a stable job. I don't have that much debt and you're going to pay it off aggressively. Then once payments start, you could make lump sum payments, right? On the pay less strategy, if you're work for a nonprofit or government, you need to enroll your public service loan forgiveness paperwork and enroll into the right plans. We at Loan Sense here can help you. By the way, on the link that's scrolling by, you can get a completely free plan. We give people free plans there. If you have FFEL loans, like older loans, and you now realize you want PSLF, you can consolidate those loans and get yourself into an income driven payment. Do not make any payments. Ask for the money you have made back. Okay. You have 8 days to ask for that money back. So there's a time crunch to that. Okay. And all these $0 payments get counted towards forgiveness. So why make payments now when they won't add up to any more months of forgiveness? So I just wanted to reiterate that again. And of course, Wilson, I know you have like specific, probably rule timelines on how long people should pay off before they consider things like refinance too, right? But love for you to add to kind of how we think about payoff strategy.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love the slide so much because like you've narrowed it down where it's really there's two major approaches. It's either pay it down with your own money, put it out, it's on fire. Like it's a very common Dave Ramsey approach, which is once again, no one's gonna be mad at you for paying down debt early, right? The only thing we want to make sure is did you explore all your options versus paying less, right? If you're already there are ways you can pay down your loans in the same amount of period. Like there are scenarios we run where two people pay off their loans in 10 years except for one like paid nothing and the other dumped everything into it. And it's like they're both very responsible. So it's just exploring all the possible options you have. Usually for pay quickly, for kind of what I like you put here is I think usually I would say for the debt to income ratio. I mean, if you're planning to pay off your loans, and I want to say like aggressively 5-7 years, if you can do, hopefully like 5 or less, if you can like knock it down and like you hate like that's really for the people where like you don't care about forgiveness, you're worried about loans, you can't sleep at night because loans give you anxiety, then maybe that's right for you. Just dumping everything into your loans because emotionally it hurts. You don't care about the numbers, you just want to get rid of loans. It's a great option, right? Versus especially thinking about the pay less option. Usually I talk about if your student loans, especially since I work with PAs and MPs, if your student loans 150, 200, especially 300K plus, if you try route number one, pay it down quickly, and you do the math, it is very difficult. You are literally going to be living on rice and beans. You're literally going to be doing that if you do the math. So then exploring options like pay less, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to work for a nonprofit. I don't want to work in the VA. I don't want to work at FQHC." You can also work for like major hospitals. There's hospitals in every city, like big hospitals that count for nonprofit. So usually my rule of thumb is if you have at least 150 or 200K plus in student loan debt, like you should talk to a consultant, talk to a student loan consultant, like Loan Sense, because you'd be surprised how much you'll be able to save, right? Whether you go one route aggressively versus the other, usually we say in 10 years you want to take care of all your loans, but then just figuring out which path fits you best, right? Is it throwing everything into it based on your lifestyle and kind of your philosophy, or do we have other alternatives where we can pay as little as possible to get maximum
Yeah,
forgiveness?
also, like, I always ask people, like, what by paying off everything, what are you forgiving? Like, if people are like, I'm forgiving buying a house, it's like, okay, so you forgive buying a house. If you bought one, how much equity would it grow in the time you're eating ramen? How much will that house be worth? How much will whatever you put in the stock market be worth? And is it going to outpace the amount that you're gonna save? Like, there's always like, what else are you gonna do with your money, right? And then, like, there's just other things to consider for life goals. It's like people literally say, "Oh, I'm gonna divorce my spouse because I don't want their student loan to count." And it's like, wait, you don't have to divorce your spouse. You know what I mean?
Jeez.
Like, it's like I'm not gonna get married because of. It's like I'm not gonna do all these things because of their student loan debt. It's like you shouldn't make your life completely run by this debt. You should understand what your options are. So by the time they're talking to us, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to divorce my spouse. Oh my God, maybe I can afford a kid. Maybe I can do these things, right? So it's like, don't let this debt just cause you so much anxiety that you're just really thinking about decisions that you would not think if you didn't have this debt, right? We just want you to understand the numbers, make a decision that's right, but really based on what numbers are. Like we're not like the moral police. We don't make moral judgments, right? We just help guide decisions. So let's get to some of these questions real quick, because I think I covered the most important slide. So
Yep.
let me just get to the must do's for repayment. Then we'll get into questions. So please type your questions away. So, what are must do before repayment starts? Okay, you must decide on the strategy that Wilson and I talked about. What is your strategy? Okay, because if your strategy is, and you must decide your strategy in the next 8 days, I'm sorry, but you must decide it because if your strategy is I'm going to get loan forgiveness, then you need to ask for the 10,000, the 5,000, the 20, the 50. We've heard crazy amounts. I told you 117,000. You must decide whether you're going to ask for that money back, okay? So decide what is your strategy. If you do not know your strategy, you should schedule an appointment with us because we can help you based on your own financial information. Decide what that strategy should be. We will help give you the numbers. Again, we don't decide the strategy, we help you by giving you numbers, right? A second thing is if you've made so decide your strategy. If you need to get those lump sum payments back, you must call before the 31st. Make sure any servicers are getting changed a lot. By the way, from the time you were paying before 2020 to now, your servicer has likely for 16 million Americans, servicers have been changed. What does this mean? This means in this servicer change, what we have noticed from people coming back to us is that their IDR enrollments were not recognized when the servicer was transferred. And when it's not recognized, and they tell you just refile your paperwork again, and you're coming from working with Wilson and you had a $0 payment, no, you should not refile again. You should go back and get proof. You should go back. There's my son. You should go back and get proof so that we can hold the servicers accountable because you may have a whole nother year, of repayments being zero. Oh, here he is. Okay. In the live with me. Okay. Trying to eat my pencil. Anyways, the point is we want to make sure any loan transfers have been done accurately. Okay. So making sure anything you've done before has been recognized by your new servicer. And then, of course, set up auto debit. Okay. Set up auto debit. I'm so sorry. My husband's going to take him away for a few minutes. Set up auto debit to make sure your payment is never late because you want your payments to count. And you have to check if you are going for loan forgiveness or you are enrolled in an income driven plan, especially what your anniversary date is. Don't freak out and say, oh my God, October is when payments are due. And I'm just going to file into this plan. Like, don't do that. You need to know when your paperwork filing date is. And unfortunately, paperwork filing dates are moving targets. And we have not been able to figure out a pattern. Some people's paperwork is due in the middle of 2024. Other people are as late as February of 2025. So don't just automatically file something because you're getting letters from your servicer and you're freaking out. Make sure you understand when the filing deadlines are. So those are our must do based on talking to hundreds of people, helping them prepare for repayment in these past, couple months. So I know I said that with just so much passion. So I think these are the most important tips. But yes, Wilson, please add anything, and then I will start pulling up some questions here.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted to mention is that, in the beginning we talked about there's not one student loan like plan that fits everybody. And I want to say like good student loan planning is dynamic, where it really depends on your situation, your life goal. So what may make sense one year might change the following year, right? It's like, and it also depends on, hey, like one plan may fit and then suddenly, oh, I want to buy a house. Then you might need to adjust the plan. Or, oh, I have this large purchase, I need to slow down payments. Okay, we could do this. Oh, I lost my job. There are so many things that can happen in your day to day where, so it's, when we talk about deciding your repayment strategy, I would say like, and when you work with Catalina, work with me, we always ask short term, midterm, long term goals, and we're going to try to pick the best one that will try to knock out all three. But if things change, you have to pivot. But I think the worst thing you could do is like not do any of this. And just like a lot of people, we just go to work, we don't look at the loans, we don't think about the plans. But you got people like Catalina and I who like nerd out about loans, and there's for every financial situation, life situation, there's a student loan plan that complements it, right? There's a student loan plan that makes that better or makes that achievable. So that's just one thing, is just to have you guys think more about all the possible options, especially as we tackle these questions, because we're going to say it depends a lot, and we're going to say like we're going to need more information, because there isn't one size fits all. We have general buckets where how we think about like what everyone should do with their loans, but really you have to have a conversation with an expert so we can dive into everything. For example, like a good student loan person will ask you like a bunch of good questions before we even make a recommendation. And then we'll even think, like Catalina will ask, like, when are you planning on buying a home? Like, investing in the stock market, what are you doing for retirement accounts? Are you getting married soon, right? Are you going to plan to stay in your employer? There's so many different questions we have to ask before we can even recommend anything. So I
Right.
just wanted to
Yeah.
put that out
That's an
there.
absolutely good point. Like, as I always ask people, you're so sure about PSLF, right? Like, you love your job, right? Like, I always like to check in, because people are so gung ho, and then it's so funny. They come back a year later, and then they're like, I don't know about this. So you don't know. But the worst thing to do is pick a plan that you can't reverse, and not to dump on refinance. But if you're not 100% sure,
Don't
don't
refinance.
refinance your loans, because then you're
Yeah.
really just limiting yourself, right? And I do dunk on refinance a lot, because I don't want people to do it and then have no options. And then it turns out they lose their job. They want to start a family, and then they refinanced in such a place where now they can't,
Do
they can't
anything.
do
Yeah.
those things. So let me get to a few more questions, and then I want to talk about some steps to just understanding what plan options there are. So, Demario, thanks for clarifying. Again, I just want to say, the question being like, Demario consolidated student loans and making payments and getting a bunch of emails from the bank stating that they need to apply
Mhm.
to pay back the loans. Okay, so everyone's getting statements that payments are due. Okay, I just want to say that. Would consolidating make payments cheaper? Should they stay with the bank? So this is one thing I don't understand about the question to Mario that I just do want to ask, because I wanted to address it though, because people are asking, like, what I don't understand is your loans a private loan, or is it a public loan?
Okay.
Because if you're consolidation is the only time where you actually get to pick your servicer. Okay. Obviously, if somebody's consolidating and they're going PSLF, we always recommend Mohila, because it's going to go to Mohila anyways. If they're not PSLF, we tend to recommend Great Lakes, because they have good reviews. Great Lakes, we tend to recommend Great Lakes. So the action of consolidating and choosing your bank, I'm unsure of, because I don't understand if that's true consolidation, federal program, or refinance.
Refinancing with a
Right.
private,
So
yeah,
so
because they'll try to get you.
Right. So banks will always try to say, "Oh, refinance with us to get a lower rate." There'll always be somebody doing that, just like you get nonstop credit card offers, right? But if you get a private lender saying to you, "Refinance, move your loans to us," blah 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 blah, all this, like, don't take those letters as like I should refinance my student loan. Don't take that as such. If consolidation is right for you or not completely depends. Do you have direct loans? We tell everybody, you have direct loans, do not consolidate. We have waves, dozens of Kaiser employees saying, well, my employer said I need to consolidate my loans. Well, it's like, no, you don't. You have direct loans. What are you consolidating them to?
Yep.
So
Yep.
like, again, like, does consolidation right or refinance? Again, depends on your strategy, and do not take letters from the bank or any bank as like a sign you need to do something. Okay. I just want to say that, because again, I don't want people doing actions and counting on things based on like what a letter they got in the mail is. All right. So I want to put that out there, because
Yeah.
um Demario,
I will.
again, I would let
Yeah.
I'll let Wilson add. I just want to say again, really quickly, for people who have a scenario they don't understand what they should be considering. I just want to mention, like, if you go at the link right there, bit.ly/Wilson Live 20. Okay. We simplified the link. You literally can answer 7 questions, upload your student loans, and get a completely free plan. Okay. We're not asking you to spend a dime, just get a free plan. You don't even, some people come in and say, I don't even know if my loans are private or public. Okay, it doesn't matter. Just go in there and we will tell you what your loans are. Even, like, just get a free plan. Okay, so to avoid mistakes, like, get a free plan, know your strategy, how many payments you have counted towards loan forgiveness if you're going that route, file properly on time. Those are the key things to avoid mistakes. Okay, if you're going to use us or not, it does not matter. Get a free plan, know your strategy, how many payments you have left, file on time if you're going IDR. um And then I'm going to take more questions. Like, there's things that we add value to besides just making strategy decisions. But like, if you filed and you're getting notices back from your servicer saying your payments, you're not in the right plan, your payments aren't counting, whatever it is, we can help you file properly and get your payments counted. Okay, that's one. Another thing, if you're married and don't know if you should file separately, what should you do? How many dependents count? Does your husband count dependents only? Do you get to count them? Both people get to count them, by the way. But like, what are decisions you make on the paperwork that they don't explain it very well? What should you be filling out? We can not just help you make a decision, we can actually file it and you sign it and make sure it's correct. Okay. I just want to say that. Lastly, here's like an example, someone that got 170,000 completely erased after their consolidation from FFEL loans into PSLF. They spent years filing forms, didn't get any of their payments counted, not any, but very few counted relative because their employers filled it out incorrectly. So that's another huge no. And literally, you can go back and qualify. A lot of your employers try to do it before the 7-year mark, right? Because people start delete, like they aren't required by law in many states to save your paperwork past 7 years. So definitely do it by the 7-year mark. This is a person who got $170,000 of debt completely forgiven, right? I wanted to share these results because then you can understand the use cases. And then I say this deal is valid for the next 5 days because it was on the slide. We're making it until repayment starts. So, repayment starts October, right? So like, here it goes. Like, get a free plan, by the way. I'm telling you, it's completely free, helping you understand if you should file separate or not. Advising and enrollment, like, we've cut down the fees already. We've made it like our fees way lower during this time of repayment starting. And with Wilson's code of live 20, you get an additional $20 off. I just want to say that, like, we've cut the fees significantly from around 500 to 249, or 3 payments of 89 if you can't afford that. Again, this is the link bit.ly/Wilson Live 20. Use coupon code Live 20 after you get the free plan. Okay. And I don't want to turn this into a huge sales thing because it's not meant to be. But for those who have been kind of like sitting on their free plan thinking, should I do it or not? Here's the Live 20 code to go ahead and do it, and do it before repayment starts. Okay. So, Wilson, what question should we take?
Yeah. One thing to add, I just wanted to say, like, thank you for lowering the price. I would say you're the only student loan, I think, consultant I work with. One, just because you're a kind of refinance last, right, type philosophy. Especially for the healthcare providers, for my audience, you really try to leverage as many federal programs. And also I would say you're investor and real estate friendly, right? You don't find that often. You're very real estate and investing friendly. Plus it's like at 250, right? Plus the discount. Like, I guarantee you, like, Catalina is going to find a way for you to save money. And if not money, time. You're going to save so much time. You're going to get clarity. So I just wanted to throw that in
Oh,
there.
well, thanks. I didn't expect a testimonial, but yes, we are very investor, lender, buying a home, thinking about how to use your money friendly, because over 80 lenders send people to Loan Sense to figure out if they have a large student loan debt, how to buy a house. We also know all the mortgage underwriting rules. So if that also happened to be you, that is why we're investor. And also, when they say investor, it could be you're investing in your first home, right? Too, where you grow equity in your first home.
Yep.
So yes, we are very
Correct.
friendly on that because it is the American dream and the step to building wealth, right? So with that, self promotion ending now. Let's make sure to get to some questions because
Yeah.
I know we're gonna try to, Wilson, if you don't mind, we're gonna try to wrap it up in the next like 12 minutes or so, just because
Yep.
at least East Coast time it's coming to 9:30. But we do want to get to questions though. I'm definitely ending with questions, so keep them coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it. We'll rapid fire through them.
Yes.
I can tackle one really quick.
Which one? And I
There
can
was
display it real quick.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's just go in the order of sorry, I'm just scrolling.
No
Make
worries.
sure they're not. There was one about actually we'll just start with Brandon's. We can start with Brandon had two good questions.
Okay.
So one about his wife, they're in PSLF, both PA. Should they switch to the SAFE? And I'll answer the second one first, and this one you don't have to put on. Like, are there tax implications on the amount of loans forgiven in PSLF? No. Like there's no tax implications. Like whatever's forgiven through PSLF, you don't have to pay taxes on.
Yeah,
So then,
absolutely. Okay, so filing, okay, jointly or depending on the calculator comes out with different payback amounts. Confused. Okay. Okay, I think Brandon, you're talking about our filing separate or joint calculator. So I have to understand what you're inputting or what's coming out. Oh, I think we talk about like if you file joint versus separate and we compare the amounts. If there's amounts that are confusing, please, by the way, if you email us info@myloansense.com, we have an amazing customer support team that will answer, especially if you've used our service or returning to us. Brandon, your name looks familiar. So if we're actually rolling out a membership program, but the point is we will answer your questions. Send us any emails. If you're looking at something in our software that's confusing, we want to make sure it's not confusing, right? Now to answer the second question, my wife and I are both PSLF via payee. Okay, both PAs. Should we switch to the save plan? I can't answer that right off the bat because again, the
it
really
depends.
big both PSLF, so it's capped at 10 years, right? This is how I say. This is what I like to say. Number 1, it depends on your IDR anniversary date. Let's say your IDR anniversary date, the paperwork refiling date is after you file taxes next year, right? And it depends on your tax filing status. That depends. So it depends on when your paperwork's due, what your current tax filing status, and based on those two answers, we can help you understand when to switch if you are going to switch. So for most likely, we would recommend switching, but when to switch exactly depends on those exact two things. What's your current tax filing status and when is your income driven repayment plan required to be filed? Okay? So if we can get those two answers straight, and let's say you don't have to file until the middle of 2024, right? And let's say you really want to be filing your income taxes separate. If you both have student loans, you might need to not do that. So then you can apply for save as soon as this year, right? So again, depends on tax filing status and your spouse's income, whether you should be filing separate, and then it depends on when your paperwork due date is. So for the most part, save is great, but exactly when to file depends on those things. Like people will want to buy a house and they'll ask us, do I enroll in save now? Do I wait? Blah, 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 blah. I want to buy a house. And then they have complications with being married. So, and that they need to file separate in order to get this lower payment. So then again, that impacts exactly when you should enroll into a plan, right? Is when is the paperwork due? What is your tax filing status going to be? So again, I can more concretely answer that if I understand when is your paperwork due? What's your tax filing status if you're married? Okay. So I'm sorry if that sound confusing. Save is great for the most part. I recommend it in about 90% of the cases, but exactly when
Yep.
to get into it is the moving target. Okay. Because let's say you're filed jointly, right? You're filed jointly and your paperwork is due like soon. Okay. If you enroll in save and it only can count joint income, that's not advantageous for you to go into save now. Like you want to file separate, right? So those are the two factors that matter. And I hope I didn't add more confusion than clarity. But again, it depends on those two things.
Yeah. Catalina, I also wanted to ask too, because before, if you switch from one plan to the other, that would reset your PSLF payments, right? If you switch like halfway in. But then now, if you switch between repayment plans, they still all add up together. Is
So
that my
here's the thing,
understanding?
real quick. The thing is, I'm sorry, one second.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm literally just begging my husband. This is why I was like, we have to go soon because I'm sorry. He's picking him up. Anyways, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about this interruption. Okay, so okay, your PSL, like, okay, so right now, PSLF, you can get PSLF counted for any of the income driven programs, including standard. So the factor that is not good when you change plans is it would cause what's called interest capitalization, where all the interest gets added to the principal. Okay. And then now your interest is adding up on top of a higher principal amount. That's what happens when you switch programs. But PSLF is taking away interest capitalization. So that's also another benefit of the new PSLF program. I didn't talk about
Mm.
that because that's so nuanced that most people are like, what's interest capitalization in the first place? So I didn't talk about that. But um, there is, for the most part, people have a huge benefit from switching to save so that the little interest that even if it didn't get rewritten in this rule would be minor unless they had more interest than principal, which is not the case for most people. You know, yeah, I hope that answered. Should we go on to another question, Wilson?
Yeah, let's do Chris's. Chris is a good one, and I can tackle that one.
Okay, cool.
So Chris talks about like, what is your, and this is a great question. What if your debt to income ratio is currently in the 1.5 range? You're employed privately, and you're probably not going to be eligible for PSLF. So like Helene was saying, there's more than one way of getting forgiveness. You can also go like the 20, 25 year route. The options available for you is still explore everything, right? Kind of the different paths that exist are either if you're in federal plans, like figuring out the rest of your life goals first, because sometimes if you just do it from a math perspective, oh, I can refinance, get my numbers low, pay it down aggressively, that's great. But life happens. Might need to buy a house, might need to buy a car, emergencies might happen, and you might lose your job. So depending on like how stable your life is, it's sometimes worth staying in a federal program, still paying it down aggressively until okay, I can knock out my loans now in like 5 or less years.
Right.
So
No,
go
no, no.
ahead, Kelly.
I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. And if and you're probably never going to be eligible for PSLF. I would say depends. Like check. A lot of people, we were joking around saying like, oh, do you want to stay in PSLF? Sometimes we talk to people and we're like, hey, your debt to income ratio is 1.5, but have you are you maxing out retirement accounts? Right? Are you taking advantage of $0 payments? Right? When you have a change in income. So there are ways you can also drop your income.
Yep.
On paper. But you have to talk to someone who knows what they're doing. You can make, right? I have people who are making 150K, but on paper, they're not making, like, some people aren't making anything. Some people are making way less than that because we're doing things legally to lower your income.
Right. So I want to add
again,
to this. I want to add so
yeah,
much to this, Wilson, as
yeah,
well. Here's the thing. If you have too high of debt relative to income, you can't accelerate payments unless you're literally like living at home, not paying rent. Like there's a lot of factors for you to accelerate. So here's the thing, like you can this is my question to you. Can you manage on a standard 10-year plan? If you can manage on a standard 10-year plan, there's nothing wrong with just paying off over 10 years. If you can't manage on a standard 10-year plan, you're a great candidate to go into an income driven plan. Who cares if it's a 20-year? If you can't afford to pay the 10-year one, who cares if it's a 20-year? And like Wilson said, there's ways to reduce and even get years of $0 payments between jobs, right? We teach all of our Loan Sense soon to be members, because we're rolling out a membership program, how to optimize getting lower payments. Like we will file using the lowest proof of income over the last several years, because we will keep your payments, get them as low as possible over multiple years of proof of income, completely legal. We're not doing anything illegal. But the point is there's many strategies to help reduce the payment that you don't have to be public servant. We can still reduce your payments over multiple years with this income driven repayment waiver.
yep,
The Department of Ed will count up to 3 years of time you did not make payments plus 3 years of the pandemic. So that's 6 years right there out of a 20-year plan. That's 14 years left, you know? And so that almost brings you down to pretty close to 10 years, right? Especially if you
yep.
can't afford to pay the payment. So again, don't think just because I'm not a public servant, there aren't options. There are certainly options. So my first question is, can you afford to make your 10-year full standard plan? If you can't afford to make the plan, learn the tips so that even the extended plan can work for you, right? And let's say you end up making a ton of money in the next 2 years. Well, guess what? You could just pay off even the income driven plan. You could pay it off faster. But you don't need to make that decision today if you can't afford to make it today. And you don't have to limit your options today. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Pick the option that's the most flexible because you can always go from there.
Right.
Don't pick the one that you can't reverse.
So here's the question. Is this the one you're talking about, Wilson? Is there a I said I'd be done now, but I'm so obsessed with student loans. Let me take a few more minutes. Is there a formula to help you decide when consolidating loans is the best strategy? Well, first of all, consolidating loans is not a strategy. Okay, so let me be very frank about that, because consolidating student loans is not a strategy. Consolidating student loans is a pathway to get to a specific student loan program. Consolidating loans should only be done if you have FFEL loans or you have Perkins loans or something that is not a direct loan. If you have a direct loan, there is no need to consolidate. I just want to be clear about that. No need to consolidate at all. Like, don't consolidate unnecessarily. People are like, but it rolls 20 loans into one. And I'm like, okay, the only reason you care about that is if you're going to plan on making a bunch of late payments and you don't want to mess up your credit. Okay. That's the only reason you care, because guess what? It rates the average of all your interest, and it doesn't even reduce your interest. It makes your interest, it doesn't
Yeah,
reduce,
go up a
yeah,
little.
go up a little because it'll capitalize all the current interest. So there's no benefit. Consolidation is not a strategy. Consolidation is a pathway to get into PSLF, or it's a pathway to get into a better student loan plan. It's not a strategy. So I hope we're super clear on that. Okay. All right. Wilson, are there any, by the way, we are always open for questions, info.myloansense. Are there any questions, Wilson, you want to take? Because I don't know if we're going to get to every single one of these. I love it. We didn't anticipate this many questions. So thank you so much.
Yeah. There's probably one last one from
Yes.
Julie. She says, if you sign up for IDR, specifically the SAVE program, can you change your payment plan later? Absolutely. Like that's what I love about federal programs. You can always change plans, but also make sure you talk to someone first before changing it.
Yes. Yes, you can change the plan. Absolutely. But Save honestly is one of the best plans ever rolled out. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's hard to argue against it.
yeah,
Yeah.
like today, I saw Bar's file come through. This person made almost $200,000. Granted, they had a lot of student loan debt, but even they got a reduction, like earning $200,000. They got a reduction in payment over the standard plan, earning $200,000. So, like, the payment savings is so great that I don't envision people needing to move out of Save unless another plan gets rolled out that's even better or
Yep.
something, you know? So,
Yeah. They've just added so many things to it that, yeah, all the stuff, before it was repay versus pay. If it now is just like they beefed up Save so much that I agree, 90% of the time it's a pretty solid plan.
yeah. Well, thanks for this compliment. I got a compliment from somebody in the channel that said it was a huge help. Yes, we're here. Welcome to, thank you so much. Yes, I love to be here of help. Any help we could do, we are always on standby. Oh, can I take this one last one, Wilson, and then we'll be
Go
go?
for
Like,
it. Go for it.
can we help a person who is in their 50? Oh, let me just post it here. I think this is really important because you'd be surprised by the number of people in their 50s and 60s coming to Loan Sense. You would just be shocked because you think by 50 and 60, a lot of people in their mind stereotype that by 50s and 60s, you just won't be dealing with this anymore. And you're welcome, Julie. Thanks for joining. Can a person who is in their 50s and wait, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm covering up the question. Can you help a person who is in their 50s and still have student loans? Yes, we can absolutely help. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of people who take out Parent Plus loans. Okay. And they end up in a bind. Or a lot of times we'll see people where, okay, like the mom will take out a bunch of Parent Plus loans and the father will have work for like a hospital or the government. And then the mom's like a stay at home mom and somehow took out all this debt. Like, it didn't make any sense because the dad should have taken out the debt because they would have been qualified for PSLF and got it forgiven. Like, oh my God. The point is like, I even tell people before you take on the debt, like you should probably ask some questions, right? Because
Yep.
that's a horrible, tragic situation. Or sometimes like people will get divorced and now the mom who took out all these Parent Plus loans doesn't really have makes much less money, and now they're stuck with all these Parent Plus loans and the
Mm,
other parent never shared any of the obligations, and it's completely on the back of the one parent who actually ends up earning less. So there's all these things. So basically, long story short, yes, that is why we see people in their 50s and 60s. We even have like people sending their parents, like, I want to help my parents who took out all this debt for my education. Like, how can I help them? Right. Besides just giving money directly, are there options for forgiveness for that parent? So we're rolling out not just a membership for our customers, but we're rolling out a couples membership. And when I say a couples membership, I don't mean just you and your spouse. It could be you and your parent, right? It could be like somebody that's closely tied. We're going to let two people who are closely tied, whether it's a parent and a child or two people who are together, married or not, we will
Mm.
let them do that because especially if even if you're not married and if you plan to be, it's still important that you work out your finances, right? If you're a parent and somebody you took out somebody's debt, your child's coming and they want you to get help. Like those are scenarios like we definitely want to help across the board. So we're even rolling out a couples, even if you're not a couple, could be child parent, a two-person membership, that are tied together. So I wanted to put that out there because we do absolutely help parents with Parent Plus loans, understanding Parent Plus loans can even do, Wilson, I don't know if you know this, double consolidation to be taken out of the ICR plan into Save. Did you know that?
I knew about it, but I was like, that's a go to Catalina
Yeah,
type
yeah,
thing.
yeah. But also, I wanted to say finally about double consolidation. We've done it several times now. You have to do it before December of 2023. So I just wanted to roll out the timeline as it comes to that and sign up link for membership. We're going to roll out the membership, and when we send out the email, please ask us all the questions you have about membership. We're gonna end this live soon. Like I want to answer your questions about the membership. So let's have a follow up on that if you don't mind. We can answer. We don't have every single detail about the membership refined. That's why we haven't sent it out yet. So I don't want to start answering things before I'm ready to answer them. So let's have a follow up on that. And
Oh, wanted to take
yeah, yeah,
Christine.
yeah.
Her
Of
question
course.
got buried. I'll take 10
Yeah, of
seconds to
course, of
answer it.
course,
She
of course.
asked, what if I'm working full time at a non-profit hospital, but my paycheck comes from a private hospital contracted by the hospital? So I'm assuming you're asking like, and you want to do PSLF, right? So you're working for a nonprofit, but you're contracted in by a private group. So with the new changes that Biden made, if you live in California or Texas, yes, they will count, but but make sure you file correctly. Go to someone like Loan Sense because they're going to try. It's interesting. We work with a lot of clients and they say it's not possible. The employer says it's not possible. You call the government, they say it's not possible. It is possible. If you're working in California or Texas, you just have to work with people who know what they're doing. And then Loan Sense will help you with the paperwork. They'll tell you how to navigate through that. So if you're in California and Texas, you absolutely can qualify for
Oh, I
PSLF.
just posted the link, by the way, on FA on student aid facts. We not just help you fill out the paperwork, we'll do it for you. We'll even fax your employer and track them down to sign the paperwork. And we can even explain to the employer why they now can, not your employer, but the hospital, why they can now sign the paperwork. So we
It's
will make
amazing.
sure. But yeah, California and Texas, yeah. So yes, you can absolutely do it. I chatted the rules on studentaid.gov. And the reason I chat these rules are because we always lead. These are now the rules. The rules say you can qualify your employee even if they don't directly work for you. And we show HR, these are the rules. So can you please assign someone to sign this paperwork? Thank you very much. You know what I mean? So, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's a free benefit for them. So why wouldn't they want to do that to retain their workforce? We'll say that too. It's a free benefit you're not paying for. Can you please assign someone to sign the paperwork now? And they'll be like, okay, can we send more people who have questions because we don't know how to answer it? And we're like, sure, of course. So we're happy to help you because it ends up helping more people. And thank you. If you do not live in California, we should still talk because private
Yeah.
employers can come up with MOUs as long as you're directly serving that hospital. So let's talk. We've helped people outside of California and Texas. Danielle, happy to talk more. Thank you so much for your time, Wilson.
Yeah. Thank you,
I
everyone.
always love lives with Wilson. And let us know if you like more topics like this. What kind of questions, if you want us to do more lives, please let us know. We love feedback. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the live now. And if you have any questions, again, info at myloansense.com. Please subscribe, by the way, to my channel, Wilson's channel. Please subscribe, please like, please share, so that we can help more people win. So thank you so much for your all's time.
Bye.